Welcome to the Champion Circle. It is an honor and privilege to be here with you today. We thank all of our viewers for their support. Most importantly, we thank Liga de Justicia Abogados and the Liga de Justicia Foundation for the ability to make this come to life. The Champion Circle was created in order to highlight amazing individuals from our community that are changing the world, that are doing things to make the world a better place than how they found it. And I've been very blessed to be able to interview a number of people that are in my circle. Many people that I know pretty well, but I've always learned something new throughout that interview and that podcast. And today is no exception. Today, I have the honor and privilege to interview a person I consider a friend, a colleague, a person that I consider an inspiration in my life, someone who I believe inspires many people, inspires our community, and inspires young little girls like my daughters. So we'd like to welcome none other than Adriana Dever.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much. Thank you for having me. Thank you for Liga de Justicia and Liga de Justicia Foundation. It's an honor, it's a privilege, and always look forward to seeing you and speaking with you, because likewise you also inspire me and many people in this community.
Thank you. I appreciate that. God bless you. I appreciate that. Well, fortunately, this interview and this podcast is not about me. It's about you, and it's about you telling your story. So what we hope to accomplish here is to be able to allow Adriana to tell her story, to talk about her journey, to talk about her challenges and accomplishments, and to share those nuances of her life with you, with our audience, and all of our viewers and subscribers. And so we always like to start in the beginning, Adriana. So I'm going to ask you to tell me, where were you born? What was your childhood like? Talk to me about your childhood experiences.
Había una vez, and it's okay to do Spanglish, right?
Absolutely.
Code switching, los dos idiomas de aquí para allá. Well,
Sí.
I was born in Santo Domingo, República Dominicana.
La capital.
La capital. However, I did not live in La Capital. I was raised in San Pedro de Macorís. Un pueblito hermoso. What a beautiful place. What a magical place, I would say. And I reflect that in many of my writings as I celebrate, our language, our culture, and just being Dominican, being Afro-Dominicana. Una cosa que celebro bastante. At around 10, I moved with my grandmother to La Vega, where I spent the last few years living there en el área del norte, aprendiendo también, creciendo, learning to love, all these different sides of our beautiful Quisqueya. And then at 13, I was, around 12, I was given the news that we were moving to the United States, So I don't know if you know this, but my grandma from my mother's side was Puerto Rican.
Right.
She was from Ponce.
Yeah, you mentioned that.
So,
yes. Yes. So, but before we talk about your journey to the mainland United States, tell me a little bit about the towns that you grew up in and the differences or the good memories that you have.
Amazing memories, Mark. I have always told my children, now I have 2 kids, and when we go to New York City, I always mention to them how when I was going to school in DR, I was brought to school in a carriage, en un coche, con caballos. But at that time, as a child, you don't quite appreciate all the things that your culture is giving you. So I saw that, and I remember that oftentimes I was picked on or made fun of because I was being brought to school in this carriage, or this gentleman in this coche was picking me up. It was not until I came to the United States that I learned to appreciate that. And now every time that I have an opportunity to go back, I go back into those specific moments and share those specific things that we so often kind of neglect when we're there. So San Pedro de Macorís, very historical, a beautiful place, cerca de las playas Ahí del Este, Juan Dolio is one of the places that I dream of owning una casita. Also very close to Higüey, which is, another town where my parents used to always talk about, and my grandmother was from there. And I really missed those first few years when I moved to the north, to La Vega with my grandmother, the school, the surroundings, El Malecón, just having that opportunity to go to El Malecón every day.
Right.
And enjoy esos helados bon. Now, again, one of those things that while I was there, I used to say, ay, pero es que tu helado, or, oh, the same thing. And then all of a sudden, that goes away from you, or you step away from that.
That's right.
And then you have that longing and
Yes.
that emptiness. And you truly learn to appreciate who you are, who you're becoming, and where you came from. And that to me is so meaningful and has influenced my writing so deeply.
Right.
As you might have seen already.
Yes, absolutely. So the transition from the coast to La Vega, how did you manipulate that? How did that make you feel? What do you remember about transition?
You're gonna make me cry.
Yeah. That's the point of this podcast. No, I'm just kidding.
I remember, and this is something that also I have shared through writing. I remember that I was a child who was very fortunate, who had a loving family, but I was also a child who always thought, who was constantly thinking a lot and trying to fix people's ways. And I was always trying to mend the relationship between my parents and appease certain situations. And when I was about 10 years old, we were living very uncomfortably, very, very uncomfortably. It was a studio apartment, actually smaller than this studio here. And I remember just telling my parents that I wanted to move out. I wanted to move with my grandmother. And I didn't even ask. I just told them. I was like, you know what? I want to move with grandma. And that's it. I spoke with her, and I'm moving over there. Like they're gonna put me in a good school, and I'm going there. And I had this very, very close cousin. She wasn't my cousin. She was my dearest sister. And I remember her saying, yes, it's going to be so great and you're going to love it here. To make this story short and not bore you, within a few months of moving with my grandmother, my dearest sister, Judy, passed.
Oh,
tragically.
I'm so sorry.
And God works in magical ways, because it was just one thing after another. Like I said, I was always a child who was always thinking on how to, make those around me happier, on what I could fix or what I could do or what I could create, because I was already writing little poems and short stories. And I just remember that I missed my mom so much. And it was such a difficult time, seeing my grandmother, but having taken on the responsibility of being there. Like, I didn't want to leave her. Mm-hmm. I miss my mom. I wanted to, feel the closeness with her, because that pain felt unbearable, losing someone that was so close to all of us. However, I did not want to leave my grandmother. I felt like she had convinced me to move there, meaning, my sister, that now it was my job to protect my grandma and to stay there and to really look after her. So, it was a I don't know if a pivotal point,
right.
in my life.
Right.
And aside from that, even at that young age, I always, I was dealing with depression, and I didn't realize that,
Mm-hmm.
I started either feeling certain things that were very deep and writing certain things. And I tell you, because I have journals that I kept from when I was very young. And as an adult, when I started reading it, I was like, oh my gosh, I was having meltdowns and I was very depressed. And my parents didn't realize that, mm-hmm. Even though I was dealing with so much sadness as a child, I always wanted to protect the grown-ups around me, not to let them see that, until, unfortunately, there was a turning point in my life when I couldn't hide it anymore.
Okay. Well, I mean, that's deep. And I can identify with that a lot, Adriana. When I look back, I found a couple of pieces of paper that I wrote on, and I can definitely identify with what you're talking about. So in DR, one of the things that I celebrate and I love most about you is your celebration of your Afro-Caribbean kind of identity, and how you are just very aggressive about it and celebratory about it, and it's something that what I found in the Dominican culture, because part of my family is Dominican as well, is that that's not always the case. Did you have that support for that when you were young?
Yes and no. Because there's always these subtle messages. There is this, I love you, but,
right.
There is always this, tú eres tan linda, pero...
Right, the pelo malo.
Si tú tuvieras el pelo
like
lacio, fuera más bonita.
Right,
so
right,
I always had to deal with that. It was like, I was pretty, but not pretty enough.
Right.
And then I remember family members saying how some of my cousins were la crema innata de la familia because, they were lighter skinned,
right.
their hair were straight,
right.
Their eyes were a little lighter. So all of these things I grew up seeing. At the same time, they would say, oh, but we love you so much and we're so proud of everything that you do. And you are so beautiful. That dress looks so great on you. Ay, qué cuerpazo. I always had a nice figure. So you're constantly in a back and forth kind of situation until thankfully, I always managed to kind of find and decide what I would take and what I would disregard and just go on and so forth. And there are many instances that I recall as a child where I felt like, ouch, like, if you love me, why are you saying that to me?
Right.
Or like,
right.
You mentioned the hair.
Right.
Why did I have to get a relaxer when
Correct.
I had just turned 12,
Sure.
Why couldn't we figure out what hair products were right? But it, unfortunately or fortunately, it was all part of, our culture and how we associated and felt, and still to this day, many people feel more proud of their European sides,
Right.
than our indigenous or our African side.
Right.
And even more so of our African side, because it's easier for someone to say, oh, si yo soy taíno, pero yo no soy negra.
Right.
We're both. And that's what makes us stronger. That's what makes us as beautiful as we are. That is, what gives us such strength.
Amen.
And ese sazón, like I always say, like esa gracia comes from that, come from that mixture.
Yes.
Recognizing what everybody brings, but really uplifting them, because that's just something que llevamos por dentro.
Right. So that self-esteem, that self-identification, that strength from within that you had, plus the support of your family, allowed you to kind of create your own space. It allowed you to become a writer, even if it was just a journal, because it was actually, a poet in training, essentially, right? So now you get to a point where now you have to migrate to the United States. So now you're dealing with a whole new dynamic. Not only are you dealing with perhaps the Black, European, Taino dynamic of our Caribbean roots, but now you're dealing with a whole new culture, right? Talk to us about when you came to the United States. What did you experience?
Oh my, even before coming, I remember exactly the day that my grandmother was so excited. It's my grandmother from my dad's side, Doña Chela. And I just remember that I went to school and it was recess. And I'm talking to friends, and for some reason, the principal was so excited too that they allowed my grandmother to come inside the school all the way to where I was talking to my friends during recess. And she comes, they call me Jacqueline at home, is my middle name. Jacqueline, te vas para Nueva York. And all this excitement. And I was just like, huh? Like, no.
So you had no
So,
idea?
I knew that they were expecting to get papers, but there were many issues. Documents were getting lost. The mailing system wasn't reliable. So all of these different issues. I wasn't expecting it to happen then, at that precise moment. And within, I think it had been just 1 year or less from my sister's passing. So I just felt that everything was just happening too quickly. That I was finally getting comfortable in that space, in that new school, made friends, and I was finally flourishing there. And now all of a sudden, you're going to take me away from here again?
Right.
So, and to have her come there, I'm like, I love you, but what are you doing here?
Right.
Like, it was one of those moments. And I would never, the few times that I disrespected my grandmother, I remember because I cried afterwards and just begged her for forgiveness. And I just remember looking at her and I started to cry. And all the other kids were like, yeah, Nueva York, Nueva York. And I'm like, shut up. Like, what are you talking about? So my parents told me, yes, you're coming. My mom told me, maybe you could stay this summer and then go back. So immediately, once I heard that phrase, that was my thought. I was like, you know what? I'm going to go to Nueva York. I get to see it, spend the summer there, and then I'll be back. Grandma, I'm coming back. So that was my expectation. Little did I know that the moment I came to the United States, 4th of July, 1994, with all the fireworks and all of these different celebrations happening here, my mom's sister, my aunt, looked at me and said, ¿Y por dónde tú quieres que tú vas? Tú te quedas aquí. Tú tienes que estar donde está tu mai. And I'm like, it was like a slap on the face, Mark. Right. I said, no, they promised that I will go back. And she goes, no, señor, usted está donde están sus padres y aquí usted se queda. And my mom just made eye contact, and I knew at that moment that was it. So it was upsetting. It was nice to have, to be enjoying pizza by myself, to not have to share a full apple. We had a lot of different needs when we were in DR. And I was fortunate enough to live with my grandmother, who was able to provide even more when I lived with her. But I just remember, being in awe at all the things that I had accessible while I was here in Brentwood, in Long Island. I'm like, wow, like, oh, this is mine. This space is mine. So that kind of eased the process. I still didn't like school. I had quite a few instances in school where I felt like I didn't belong. It was very challenging. It was heartbreaking. And I started having, again, those moments when I would just cry and cry. I made friends, or not made friends, but really became close to the social worker in the Brentwood School District. But it was because I was looking for that person to talk to, that person to listen to me, and just to find that comfort that I felt that I couldn't find at home. And when I think about it, I don't know if it's necessarily because it wasn't there, or if it's because that sadness, that deep sadness that was inside of me, was kind of taking over, and no one was realizing it,
So did I hear you correctly? You moved straight to Brentwood?
I'm pretty sure you've seen the house. We used to live on Pioneer Drive. There is a gas station on the corner of Fifth Avenue and Pioneer Drive. Okay. And right now it's a real estate agency. We used to live right there. Okay. So it's considered Bayshore, but it was a Brentwood school district. Right. Yes. And so, yes, I grew up going to Brentwood Library and doing all those things, walking from that house to the laundromat, walking from that house to a center that was called Telemundo to send the weekly allowance to my grandmother and my older sister, doing everything on foot. And I remember telling my parents, don't worry, I'm going to have a car one day, and then we're not going to have to walk. Right. And, so that's part of the journey here.
So you were in what grade at that point?
I was in ninth grade. Ninth grade. I went to the ninth grade center.
So you started high school here in the Brentwood School District. And I would imagine at that time, were there a lot of other Dominican families in the Brentwood Bayshore area?
There were, I guess I do remember, I do have, I'm still close friends with quite a few of the students that I graduated with. And yes, there were quite a few of us who were Dominican, you know.
And how was the cultural dynamics of the school? Did they celebrate a lot of the things that we celebrate today that we take for granted? Were all of those things part of your school experience?
Not all of them. No, certainly not all of them. Certainly there were not as many Hispanics or Latino teachers, you know, servicing us. I remember the first day of school, we were waiting outside and we had been talking in Spanish. I remember I was the only Dominican at that precise moment when I was dropped off. And there were quite a few of the students from Central America. And we were speaking in Spanish. Everybody's pulling out their schedules. When we walk inside, I say to one of the girls who were just outside, I looked at her and I said, "Oh, in Spanish, ¿me puedes ayudar? Yo no tengo eso que ustedes dicen. What's schedule?" And the young lady looked at me and she goes, "I don't speak Spanish."
Ooh, no.
And it was like that first moment when I realized, I was like, "Oh my gosh, like this is not, you know, the place that
right.
you know, what I expected, what I imagined, or, and then from there on, it was just navigating the system. You know, I stayed in the guidance office for that whole day because I didn't have a schedule. I remember being lost in the hallway, just looking around. The principal at the time was the person who found me, and he was like, "Okay, you seem lost. Follow." I didn't speak English, so he just went like this, and I just followed him. And you know, all those different moments when I said to myself, you know what, I have to learn English. I have to learn to get used to it since I have no choice. I'm going to be living here, and perhaps if I work hard enough, maybe they'll change their minds and they'll send me back.
So, talk to me about your high school experience. Where did you excel? What challenges did you have besides language challenges? I would imagine you were in ENL type of class in the beginning. How quickly did you transition from that?
Yes, at the time it was still called ESL. So I remember I had very special teachers. I remember an ESL teacher, Miss Tamburello. You know, Miss Tamburello, if you hear this, right. Thank you. Right. And I had a Spanish teacher who was also teaching us in the English lab, Miss Santana. She retired quite a few years ago, but there were those individuals that really made a difference and started pushing me to move forward. I learned to communicate. I learned within 4 months, I have to tell you. They had placed me in a class where we were all together, just, following each other. It was all in Spanish, and then within a couple of weeks I was moved and placed, in regular classes, basically with just the assistance of Miss Santana in the English lab, and I was able, thankfully, to pick up, the language fairly quickly. And then from there on, again, Miss Gangs, who also retired a couple of years ago from the Brentwood School District. She was an angel, always so helpful, always pushing us to do better. And it was, in the long term, it was a positive experience. I had a lot of people who were very supportive. I had a lot of, like I mentioned, the social worker, guidance counselors, and club advisors who really made a difference for many of us while we were there. I wasn't a A student in everything. I did the best I could, but I think because I was still learning to navigate the system, I didn't take advantage of many things that I could have. But I did go to their BOCES program, which taught me how to become better at public speaking. It taught me how to work at an office. And it opened many doors for me. Like, it really helped me discover a path that, in the long term led me to pursue a college career.
Okay. Now, obviously, because you're such an acclaimed author and poet and everything, did you develop that passion for writing in both English and Spanish in high school, or did that come later?
That came later. I always wrote in Spanish. I started writing in English when I first came here. I think within maybe within that first year, I started kind of playing with words, but didn't really feel the passion that I feel when I write in Spanish. I think it has gotten a little better, but I still feel more confident, when I write in Spanish. You know, even in speaking, me siento más cómoda hablando español.
Well, it's a beautiful thing. The culture of the Caribbean Spanish speaking culture is a dynamic that so many people just don't understand. When you say that someone is pregnant in English and you say está dando luz, right? It's a totally different feeling, right? And I think that especially the way you manipulate language and you craft it and you're so artistic, it's just a beautiful kind of, language to spread your art. And so, I don't totally understand what you're saying.
Thank you.
So you graduate high school, and you decide to do what? Talk to us.
I graduate high school. I was still feeling a little lost. I wasn't sure of what I was going to pursue, but I knew the places that I didn't want to go to. I knew the opposite. I knew that I didn't want to follow this path. I knew that my parents were working very hard to give me a better life, and I was very thankful for it, but I didn't want to follow that same path. I saw all these different women and all these different men and individuals in my life, and I would take notes. I would be like, okay, like maybe that person is a little better off, but you know what? I don't like that career. So in exploring what I didn't want to do, I decided to start attending Suffolk Community College. What was happening still in between, and then I'll tell you why this part is so important in a little bit, is that I was still dealing with that sadness. There was that emptiness inside of me, and that and that longing, and that feeling that I couldn't get rid of. That regardless of what I was able to do, regardless of how many people told me that everything would be okay, and how whether I went to church or I had a group come to the house or whatever it may be, I felt that emptiness, and I felt that I wasn't deserving of the good things that were happening in my life.
Right.
And that really torn me. That really made things much harder. And I didn't know at that time that it was, I was dealing with anxiety, I was dealing with depression, I was dealing with all these different things in silence. And nobody knew.
Right.
Nobody knew until the point that when I was just finishing high school, I started getting ill. Very often I would get stomach aches and all these different viruses, and they would say, oh, it's a virus. Oh, she has gastritis, or she has this. I was taking medication. I was taking different things that were either belonged to one of my family members who took, blood pressure medication. So I would say, oh, maybe this will put me to sleep. And I will pop it, and I will go to sleep. And then I will wake up, and I'll be like, oh my gosh, I'm awake again. Or I would get really, really dizzy to the point that I had to hang on to the wall. And then obviously, they will notice, oh, are you feeling okay? I'm just a little dizzy. Okay, hay que ir para el doctor. Go to the doctor. Obviously, no other symptoms. I'm not going to tell them, So, oh no, it's a virus. So it's vertigo. Okay, it was a vertigo, but it was a vertigo that it was self-induced. And it went on for many years, unfortunately. And, I take this moment to pause and say, we have to be so attentive to our children, and we have to, sometimes we say our kids are so resilient, is the word?
Right.
They're so resilient, and they're so strong, and they're so this. And when we keep on telling them how strong and how resilient they are, sometimes we are belittling an emotion that they're holding deep inside, and now they don't feel comfortable in telling us, because we're not going to feel proud to hear them say, well, you know what? Actually, I'm not. I need help. And that's how I felt for a long time, that I couldn't be honest and seek for that help, because I would be disappointing them, And that's such a painful burden to carry.
Right. So in your experience, because you were in a bicultural kind of world and you had come from missing your island, do you think that any of those components had anything to do with, your anxiety or your emptiness? Or do you think it was just part of your journey of growing up?
I think both. As I mentioned, I feel like I was always thinking. I was always trying to, can I make a card to make grandma smile? Or can I take her pain?
Right.
I was always someone who was able to connect with people's emotions. And then if it was a painful emotion, I wanted to ease their pain. But then how do I manage it as a kid, And I think it all went unnoticed. So yes, moving, not having an outlet, having left many things and people that I care for in DR. There was some sort of dysfunction. There were many things that were going on within my family unit at the moment. And there was also that, cállate, nadie tiene que saber,
Right.
So all those things kind of start oppressing you to the point when, you don't know what else to do. So you start looking for other outlets. I'm grateful that even though I was looking for ways to go to sleep, number one, it didn't happen. Number two, I found, like I said, many social workers and individuals who were willing to listen, who actually started teaching me of what was going on and opening the doors for me to find other ways. And also that I didn't experiment with anything, with any type of other drugs,
Right.
It was still harmful. So again, we have to be very careful. We have to continuously monitor our children. We have to have a open dialogue with them, really listen without judgment. Because that's, another thing, that when we feel judged, we tend to close all doors.
Well, and the stigma of mental health and wellness, right, is something that, especially in the Latino communities, Dominicans, Puerto Ricans, or whatever groups, especially in those days, right, it was something needed to be hidden. It wasn't talked about, and it was a sign of weakness, at least in my experience. I don't know if that was the same for you.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Moving forward to my college years, I graduated from Suffolk Community College. I went straight into Stony Brook. When I started going to Stony Brook, my mom became ill. She started having certain episodes and certain behaviors that I thought were not normal. And I kept in touch with Miss Torres, the social worker at Brentwood, and I contacted her, and she's, again, started educating me on all the possibilities. So, again, moving forward, I was the first person to get my mom treatment for what she was dealing with, which was, again, depression, anxiety. She had what is now considered, I guess, a bipolar disorder. So she started getting treatment, but once again, I'm taking care of my parent, looking after her mental health and neglecting my own. Okay, so this is, very challenging to accept. Yes, there was a lot of stigma. There were a lot of family members and that I had to educate on what was going on and say it's okay that she takes medication because she needs it. It's okay for us to go talk to someone because it helps us in the healing process, especially if this is me carrying this. I cannot even imagine how much our parents had to carry and deal with, and all the family traumas that they were, grew up with. So it was all these things, and that actually led me, after a few years, to attempt. I actually attempted. I actually, a few years down the road, I actually, took more than what I had ever taken before. And this time it almost worked.
So often that's a call for help, right? That's a call for assistance. That's a call for others to step up and show that support. And fortunately, you are here today and you're blessing the world in so many different ways. When you went to Stony Brook, what did you become passionate about? What did you pursue at Stony Brook?
At Stony Brook, Again, I felt confused. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm done with all of the all of the basic courses that I need to take. What am I going to do? And I was walking down the hallway by the Spanish literature wing, and I heard people speaking in Spanish. And I was like, oh, I need to go there. What is this? What is this that I don't know about? So I looked through the door and I peeked in, and then there was someone walking out from a different classroom, and I said, okay, what are these classes? Oh, this is the Spanish literature department. Oh, I want to do that. So I immediately went to sit. At that time, now everything is online. Everything is you have to take care of on your own. During those years, you could still go and talk to your counselor and then to your dean and make up a schedule. And I sat down, I grabbed the book, and I said, okay, I want to do that. Whatever that department is doing, I want to do. Okay, but what do you want to pursue? I said, well, what are the options? They presented me with the option of becoming a teacher. And I said, you know what? I used to play teacher when I was a kid. So that's where I'm going to go. So I loved, the experience at Stony Brook, going through the Spanish literature department, going through, the whole process of getting the teaching certification. And it was amazing. Highly recommended.
So you talked earlier, and I thought it was fascinating in how you said that I knew what I didn't want, right? And so many people don't know what they want, but they know what they don't want. So that's a good way of our young people to kind of look at things and say, okay, you know what, that's not for me. Like my daughter, as much as I try to convince her to be, go to law school, she's not. Papi, that's not for me. But oftentimes, and I really didn't know what I wanted to be when I was going to grow up until probably last week. But at the end of the day, I thought that was a fascinating, really insightful way of looking at things, right? But then you get to Stony Brook, and I think that world opens up, right? And you become liberated. You become someone that's passionate about something, and you start to love what you are pursuing. So talk to us about what you felt at that moment, and during that time in Stony Brook that really then blossomed into who you are today.
I fell in love with language. I just fell in love with, I remember that there was this professor who gave us an assignment on explaining tenses. But we had to come up with a story or really analyze something deeply. And I remember that I got so into it, explaining how you talk in the past tense in Spanish. I just became very passionate about reading, Cesar Vallejo, about Gabriela Mistral, just going through and learning, Gabriel Garcia Marquez, just getting immersed into this world and then trying to not be them, because they are their own unique individuals who had a wonderful legacy, but just admiring their work and then trying to say, well, how can I make this my own? How can I make my own writing? And taking advantage of all the guidance that were given by different professors. And I remember one of the professors gave us an assignment to write a poem or write a story that would showcase your culture and be colloquial and be about, a highlight of your culture. And oh man, I took that to heart. And that's when I started writing Dominican Yol. And I just went with it. So it's just that. It was passion. It was love. Then when I started doing the teaching training as well, I felt disconnected for a little bit, but it was, we always had those moments when maybe we don't connect with the people that we're working with. Right. And then I found once again angels that really opened up this space and took me under their wing. And they were like, no, you are just wonderful. You are meant to do this, and you have to look at yourself and you do it. And there's some individuals that really shake you and tell you hard things, but they really shake you and make you realize that at the end, there's something that's bigger than us. Right. At the end, this is not just me. This is, God working through me, or this is the universe using me as an instrument to serve other people, to inspire, to uplift, perhaps to share something that I've gone through, that someone is going through now, and that's going to make a difference in their lives. So it's not really about us or about our ego or what we can show. It's about how we're making a difference, to leave it better, like you said at the beginning. We just leave it better than the way we found it.
Now, did you know, by the time you graduated, did you know that you had found your niche? Did you know that you were now worthy? Did you get to a point of worthiness, of being confident and understanding that, okay, I'm on the path, I'm not where I want to be, but I'm definitely like where I'm supposed to be?
No.
Okay.
It was an absolute roller coaster. An absolute roller coaster. I had very highs that were so high that I thought that I could take the world, and just go at it. And then I had lows that were very, very low. And that's why, again, mental health is so important, because that's when I hit rock bottom.
Right.
That's the moment when I really realized that I didn't feel confident enough, that there was something else that was missing. That's when I hit rock bottom, and when everything just broke. It was just like me holding a mirror, and I dropped it, and then it was all these pieces, but all these pieces were me. Like, it was me in little pieces.
Wow.
And I had to really learn. I had to leave my body. Like, I see it this way. I actually saw me.
Right.
And I had to pick myself up.
An out-of-body experience.
Yes, and have all those little pieces put back together and say, you know what? This is the moment we get to start again.
Okay. So what brought you out of that despair to now be able to get past, beyond that, and then be on that journey towards health?
When I attempted, I just didn't want to wake up. And I remember that I just cried. I broke stuff in the house. I was at that point living on my own. So I had already been making many changes. I was the first one to move out. In a Dominican family, it was like, la boda de ella siempre será la mejor. And I'm like, ¿qué boda? Yo no me voy a casar. No me cante eso.
Right, you can't leave until you're married.
Yes, right? I was like, yeah, no. You can't live on your own, no.
Right.
So I was making all of these different changes, but yet there was that emptiness. And I just remember that after taking everything that I took and drinking, which made it worse, I just remember waking up to the chirping of birds. And I woke and I started opening my eyes, and I was still crying, saying, oh, no way, I'm up. Like, no, maybe I'm in heaven. Maybe these are the birds of welcoming me to a new place. Like, no. And I opened my eyes, and I saw the sunlight, and I said, okay, this is it. If after everything that I took and this mixed, then there has to be something that is beyond my own control, that is beyond me, like that. I just let go. And then I started crying again, and I just broke down, and I said, you know what, I surrender. At that precise moment, I remember I stood in front of the mirror, and I said, I surrender. And I'm sorry that I tried to hurt myself. And I picked up the phone, and I called a friend. I remember I said, I think I told her, don't judge me. Just, can you come get me? I need help. And she's also a social worker, so she knew to stay on the phone with me. She kept on talking to me. She kept on saying, but what are you doing? Can you go in the restroom and get ready? I'm coming. I'm on my way. And that's it. She just came and drove me to the hospital. And I had to just let go. I had to let God. I had to really surrender to everything. Whatever power I thought I had to let go of at that precise moment and welcome a new life. And that's when everything, started shifting and became more positive, because,
right.
You hit rock bottom, but there's only one thing that happens. You hit hard enough, then you bounce back up. And if you don't bounce back, then maybe there's a hand that will lift you up. And if there's not a hand, there's an invisible string that pulls you, and you hang on to that, and you find the strength to pull through. So if anybody is going through that, know that you're not alone. Know that there's help out there. The first thing to do is to recognize that you need help and that you have an issue, and go for it. Go for the help. Go for the light.
You are truly amazing. You're so courageous, and you're so just empathetic and sympathetic and altruistic, and being willing to share that private part of your life where there was a paradigm shift. There was a turning point in your life. And you recognize, as we spoke earlier before we started taping, we make plans and God laughs, right? Yeah. And that's something that I've heard before. And now you actually said, you know what, I'm sorry, I'm giving up control, because I don't really, I probably don't know what's best for me, and I don't really have it. So I'm going to let you kind of work your wonders. And because of that, you are on this amazing path now, right? So now, okay, so we get to a point where now you're in, a path to mental wellness, and you're recovering towards a good place where you're starting to appreciate yourself, and you're starting to have more confidence and all of those things. Talk to us about what things are happening in your life that you start saying, wow, wait a minute.
Just writing really saved my life. When I was admitted, I just once again started writing. I started being more aware of my surroundings, in the sense of learning from the people that I saw there, and really listening. And sometimes there's different individuals that you see once in your lifetime, but they really shake you. And I remember there was this gentleman there, and he looked at me and he goes, "What are you doing? You need to fix something, so start now." And I think I was reading a magazine or something like that, and him and a patient actually told me that don't read those, like go back to your books or keep on writing and get it together. And he was very harsh. I was like, oh my gosh, he's so mean. But afterwards, when I went back into the room, I was like, oh my gosh, but perhaps he's right. Maybe he saw something in me that I didn't see. Maybe he's seeing something in each one of us, and we just have to kind of take that spark and go from there. And that's what I tried to do. From there on, I decided while I was there that I would come out and that I would continue receiving help and that I would publish my first book. I said, you know what, maybe I'm going to start gathering things. And I started, kind of doing a little lineup of the poems that I would include in that manuscript. And needless to say that, right after that, things started aligning, and I started meeting the people that I needed to meet at the moment. And I published the first edition of Huellas de una Memoria Perdida. And yeah, that writing saved my life. It kept me busy. I started doing visits at different libraries. I actually started incorporating a students' participation. We had a Latin dance team. I used to work at Patrick Medford High School, so I used to bring and invite, the students to dance at the different poetry readings that I had, and that gave me a new sense of purpose. And when you have a purpose, then you find meaning.
Right.
A life with purpose is a life with meaning. I say that to my students all the time, and that's what kept me going.
That's beautiful. Share a verse with us right now, if you don't mind.
Oh, absolutely. Let's do the daughter of. Hija de quién? I am the daughter of Doña Chela the righteous, the strongest, la que te daba una pela con la mirada y te enderezaba el futuro sin tocarte un pelo. I am the daughter of Tía Milagros, the guilt that buries her spirit alive, y la sonrisa que se pinta en su rostro cada vez que me ve. La hija de Cira y Fifi, the ones who have lasted 50 years, although I suggested a divorce at 8. hija del tiempo, del olvido, of the solitude that keeps me grounded. Unfinished poems buried in a mended treasure box. Little fairies floating through my cloudy skies. El sol robándose un espacio ausente. La luna bailando al son del tambor, tying it all together, reminding me that I am more than a name, more than what we define as existence.
Absolutely extraordinary. Right? So now that gets produced. Do you now feel finally like confirmed or accomplished? What does that make you feel once that's produced and you start getting feedback that it's actually very good work, that it's inspirational, that it's life-changing?
I felt better. I felt like I was growing. I feel to this day that I'm growing, but I've come to realize that it's a journey, that we're always going to have other things that we want to accomplish, that we're always going to find people that we want to take care of, that there's always these little moments that are worth the most. This conversation brings so much value, to me personally. Being here talking to you is so meaningful. So we told those moments, there's never like, and I'm done, or I've reached the highest point in my life. Mm-hmm. No, I feel happy. I feel joyful. I feel grateful. I think gratitude is the most important thing from this path, and that there's always a life to touch. There's always a flower to smell. There's always like those little fairies that I mentioned. I believe in magic, so I try to find all these magical moments around us, and I think that's what makes life worth it.
So talk to us about a few of the projects that came after that.
Projects that came right after that, I started, like I mentioned, doing author visits and just meeting other people that had an interest in my work. I used to go many years ago a lot to New York City and do different work with mujeres el libro se llama Mujeres de Palabra. So we started doing like a local tour, and I even got to travel with them to Dominican Republic and just get all these different experiences. And I was still teaching, I'm a teacher, a high school teacher, so kind of balancing all of those different things and sharing that with the students. I think that was one of the most rewarding things to have. I was very shy about it at the beginning. I didn't share much. And then taking it from them, I was like, oh, okay, so it's good to share. And it makes them proud, and it makes them see that they can too. They can also, achieve anything that they want. And I kept on writing ever since. If there's a door that closes, and many doors do close, I go ahead and open another one, or make my own. I feel like what is that? I saw a movie with a magic crayon, right. The purple crayon, and I'm like, you know what? I'm doing the same thing. If this doesn't open, I'm gonna open my own door, and so I continue creating. And all of these different things and the writing itself led me to create Cuentos de Triadas. And then with Cuentos de Triadas, it started out with one path in mind, where I was doing poetry and doing videos and putting it out there. And then, managing the time and producing all these different things was very challenging. So Cuentos de Triadas really has been doing more of cultural work, and that's something that I really feel passionate about, just doing cultural programming.
But that wasn't the original intention.
That wasn't the original intention, yes, it was art, culture, and literature, but through, social media and all these different things, then when I started seeing all the opportunity and the need that our students have of seeing people who look like them, hearing people who speak their language, bring these literary pieces to their school. Oh my gosh, it's such a beautiful feeling when I see these little girls who ask me, can I touch your dress?
Right.
And I'm just like, of course. Can I give you a hug? Of course. Yes, I'm here, Or they see all these like you have here all these different elements from our culture, like they see all that and they're like, oh, that's my flag, or
Right.
it just is truly inspiring. And that's where we're going. So
right.
that's it.
So you spoke about balance earlier. So at what point in time in this journey did you start your family, and how did that impact your art and your art journey?
When I met my husband, I was doing improv theater. And I remember we used to do a lot of different things out east. We actually met at a poetry reading in Queens. So I was just involved in different poetry readings, going from here to there. Fast forward, we were having our first child. I was still trying to do the improv theater, but I started feeling guilty as a mom to leave my child, to not be home on a weekend or to have to do this. And so I really started pulling back. And I actually said that I would never do writing again. I also had a...
No, really? You said that?
I said that
That's
to him.
shocking to me because it's such a part of your DNA that it doesn't make sense.
No, I said that I had an experience that wasn't so pleasant with some critics. And I really took it to heart. Like, I was told that my writing sucked,
Right.
that it was just horrible, and that I should just quit. Someone also told me that perhaps you should pursue theater. You'll be better at acting. And I took that to heart, and I stopped writing. And I had written a few things, and I was going to throw them out. And then, my partner just took everything and put it literally in a box and hid it in a closet. After I had my second child, my daughter, she was about 18 months and he was about 3 years old. I opened that box. For some reason, I just wanted to see what was in that box. And when I opened that box, I started reading something. And what I was reading was a description of my life then.
Wow.
I started reading, mi chiquitita en luna llena, baila al sonar del tambor, remenea la cintura, canta su guaguancó. And I'm going, oh my gosh, like, okay, my daughter is like this, like this just sounds like I'm describing my family. And I started crying, and then they got all, emotional too. Are you, mommy, ¿qué pasó? And I'm like, no, like, it's okay, mommy's okay. Like, these are tears of joy. And at that moment, I said, you know what? This is a sign. I have to publish my first children's book. And that's when I realized that I had to go back to writing. So I published my little one in full moon, Mi Chiquitica en Luna Llena, which was my first bilingual children's book that thankfully was well received. It received an award by an organization out in Los Angeles, so, the Latino Book Awards. And it just fills my heart with joy, to know that sometimes we need to take those little breaks to give ourselves the space needed to create, and then to allow those magical signs to come into your life and really, touch you and touch those around you.
We have to be ready to receive whatever blessings that, are coming our way, and sometimes we're not ready. Sometimes there are haters out there, like those folks that, gave you the critique that was probably unjustified. And then other times it's just an issue of, we need to balance, or we need to take a break. And the mother's guilt issue is something that I've identified, or I've seen in a lot of different moms, right? Whereas the man typically is not does not feel the same amount of guilt when he is selfishly pursuing a career, et cetera, right? So that's something that, again, is another dynamic that you're bringing up that so many people can probably identify with.
Oh, absolutely. We have to always do the balancing act. We're wearing many hats and constantly taking care of others. And I think, that's why it's so important for us to really find an outlet, to really find what it is that fills our heart with joy, to really find those moments and cherish them. And yes, be there for the family, but also remember that you have to take care of you.
Right.
And sometimes taking care of you doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to go away for 2 weeks. It just means that you could sit with a friend and chat. It means that you could, go to the park and read a good book, that you could write. Maybe you don't even have to do anything. You could just sit in the car and look, outside, which I often do,
Right.
And that allows you to sort of disconnect and balance and put everything in perspective and give yourself the grace and pat yourself in the back. Because you're doing a good job.
Absolutely.
You know? And thank you, because you are so great at reminding us of that. Thank you so much. Sometimes I don't realize it that I need it. And then you share those great quotes or things, and they're very uplifting.
I appreciate that. So you find your joy, you find your passion, you find different ways to recharge your spirit and your soul. And that's, again, a lot of wisdom that you're imparting on our listeners today. Talk to us about, and I know you're very modest, but talk to us about some of the awards, the accolades that you've gotten over the years as a result of the mastery of your art.
The first recognition that I received, and that was, the first sign that I knew that poetry or just literature in general was so important in my life, was when I was in high school. Actually, they used to have a poetry contest at Hofstra University. And I went and I won first prize. And I still have the trophy that says Concurso de Poesía and has the year. And I look at it and I show my kids all the time. And I say, you start out young. Maybe you take a break, but then it goes back to it. My little one in Full Moon, as I mentioned, received the International Latino Book Awards recognition. After that, Huellas de una Memoria Perdida, the second edition, also received the International Latino Book Awards recognition. And Valentina Valente, She's My Dad, which is a bilingual children's book on family diversity and unconditional love, received an honorary mention by Writer's Digest, which I just sent because I keep on sending things everywhere. And then when I got that notice, it was beautiful, and it also received an honorary mention by the International Latino Book Awards. And for the last 3 years, I've also been the recipient of the Huntington Arts Council grant for the arts.
Congratulations.
So it was like 3 consecutive years that I was able to do programming, thankful for all the support and for all the people who attend all these different events and show me that there is a hunger, there is a need for all this different programming.
So that hunger that you've identified that has touched so many souls like mine and others has come through Cuentos de Triadas. Tell our audience about Cuentos de Triadas and talk to them about what types of events you like to do.
Yes, Cuentos de Triadas brings immersive cultural experiences through literary presentations, through family engagement. We do school visits, author talks. I prepare book fairs, which this will be the second year that I partner with Nassau Community College to bring the Latinx Arts Festival and book fair. That was also a great success last October. So we're starting the plans on that. So stay tuned. Follow us on Instagram for more information. And it's all about uplifting our community, educating our community, and really showing how the arts are such an important element of our everyday lives and how we can share meaningful and enriching experiences through the different forms of art. Music, dance, literature, visual arts, painting, like all of these different things. And the kids really receive it with so much love and pride and really get, like the program says, really get immersed in it.
Now, in the environment that we're in right now, and I'm not going to get political, but there is an attack on diversity, equity, inclusion, and all of those types of nuances of this great cultural fabric that we're creating as a country. Tell me why you believe it's so important to have these types of organizations like Cuentos de Triadas for just the general American public. Why is it important to all of us? Why should it be?
Because all of these organizations like Cuentos de Triadas offer us a space where we feel recognized, where we feel heard, where we are able to provide a safe space for our children, for families, where others can become acquainted with the different cultures that really are the pillar of this nation, and when we educate each other and really learn to place ourselves in other people's shoes, life becomes better. I think that for our life, our economy, everything to become better, we have to truly recognize, our past experiences, history, all the things that and stories that have been untold or hidden. And that can only be achieved by allowing all of our different organizations. There are many here on Long Island doing an amazing, job in preserving and uplifting our culture and our voices. It's just needed. It's one of those elements that only betters our society.
Man. That was perfect. It was so well said. I couldn't have said it better myself. I think it's a testimony to the greatness of the inclusion of life, right? And recognizing we are all brothers and sisters under God, and we have more in common than we have differences. But celebrating those different dynamic differences and being able to enjoy them and learn from them and celebrate them, even if, it's not my culture. And that's something that I've always been very passionate about, but it was something that you were very eloquent in kind of explaining why it's so important. So closing words for our audience, for young girls like my daughters, me and Ashley, for other people that are looking to you and visualizing a strong and dynamic woman who is such an amazing artist, such a passionate activist, and all of the things that you are. What are some closing words that you could say to them to encourage them or to inspire them?
Believe in your inner power. Believe in all the greatness that lies inside of you. To the moms, give yourself grace, and to all of us, always to live in gratitude and think of how we can uplift each other. Also, there's many times that we focus in what we don't have and kind of become jealous of what someone else is accomplishing. And that just, weakens you. We can really become stronger by uplifting each other, by making space where we can all shine, because there is room for all of us to shine. There is room for all of us to flourish and create this beautiful garden where we are all living in prosperity, joy, and receiving all of the great things that we deserve.
Talk to the audience about how they can connect with you, how they can reach out to you, what type of assistance or collaboration or partners that you could use to assist you in accomplishing your goals and objectives.
Absolutely. You can find me on Instagram as Cuentos de Triadas. Also, you can visit cuentosdetriadas.com. That is our website. And we're already in the planning of the Latinx Arts Festival and Book Fair at Nassau Community College. So just follow us and look out, because we're always looking for artists. We're always looking for, like you mentioned, collaborations and volunteers and individuals who just love the arts and believe in the power of the arts in education. Our goal is to really offer an enriching program where we're not only educating the public, but also offering opportunities for artists, and make it a sustainable type of event. It's something also that means a lot for our community. There is a lot of artists out there looking for opportunities. So this is another way of reaching that gap.
I love the fact that you use the word sustainable, because it needs to be part of the fabric of our everyday life.
Yes.
And allowing that to happen in collaboration with other partners and other organizations and agencies is how we will create an extraordinary society. So, Adriana, I just want to say that you are an inspiration to me. I've told you that before. I believe in who you are, what you are, and who you will become, because I think you're destined for even more greatness. You are a champion. You are part of our champion circle, and you are part of our chosen family. And I'm blessed to have been able to share with you today and share with you at other times in my life, and to witness your talents and your greatness and your light and your energy. And I find it really important that my daughters, Mia and Ashley, and other young people and old people like me need to witness you and what you represent and what you present to the world, because it definitely enhances all of us. So
Thank you.
on behalf of the Champions Circle, on behalf of Liga de Justicia Abogados, Liga de Justicia Foundation, we thank you for sharing
Thank you.
today.
Thank you so much. I so appreciate you and all my love. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
So once again, we've been able to highlight an extraordinary individual from our community who is changing the world, is a change agent, and is someone that is very positive, uplifting, empathetic, and sympathetic, and making the world a better place. We ask you to stay tuned to the Champions Circle, to subscribe, like, and share. And once again, we want to thank Liga de Justicia Abogados and the Liga de Justicia Foundation and my support staff, the production team that makes this possible. This could not happen without a great team, and I'm very blessed to have that. Stay tuned. We will have more amazing individuals from all of Long Island and from the 5 boroughs of New York City come and tell their stories, and we ask you to watch, listen, learn, and most importantly, to suggest other great people. We thank you, and we tell you, stay tuned.